think we're kind of in business. All right, guys, I know there's going to be people added as we go. You're welcome to keep your video off or your audio off, but if you have any questions and you want to just interrupt me, feel free to do so. And definitely, if you don't mind showing your face, I try to glance over there and catch faces to see if people are getting, what I'm going through, or they have a question, or they want to engage in any kind of conversation about it. I really just, I'm not super special. Just 23 years coaching youth soccer at every level, and then high school soccer, and a premier license with United Soccer Coaches, and through trial and error, I've come up with some things that work and don't work. And one of the things that I'm really passionate about is building staffs and growing coaches, because pay is not great, especially if you're in the school area, and developing a staff is hugely helpful, especially for younger coaches. And I did not learn that hard lesson until a little further in. And so one of the things I wanted to share about was this. So I'm going to go into depth on each of these 5 things. Excitement's on there twice. I don't want to repeat myself too much, but I'll explain why each of these are key components to building a big staff. Before I even dive into that, I wanted to talk about my staff. I started with no assistant coaches, 42 kids, 10 practice balls, 10 pennies, and 10 cones. And that was in year 1. And so to where I am now, 23 years later, I was coaching the boys and the girls. In North Carolina, the boys are in the fall and the girls are in the spring. And so both seasons I was on my own. And so now I carry 7 assistant coaches essentially, plus myself. And I kind of want to give you an idea what that looks like. Okay, so this is where I'm going to go with things. Here's a layout of my staff. I have a head JV coach, an assistant JV coach, a varsity assistant coach, another varsity assistant coach, another varsity assistant coach, and then another varsity assistant coach. And what I'm going to do lay out through my talk is, why do I have so many? What are their roles and responsibilities? How did I determine that? How did I convince so many people to help my program? And how do I pay them? How do I make that work? So, we have 4 paid stipends at East Lincoln, but they are no money at all. To be honest with you, my assistant coaches make, I think $600 total. Like that's before taxes, I think, is their paycheck. It might be $750 for one of my assistants. So when I say there's 4 paid coaches and 3 volunteers on this list going into the spring, actually, I'm the only one who makes any kind of money, and I spend it all on my staff. So as we walk through, I'll kind of explain, how do you get people in, and how do you manage the time? I'm going to come back to this document in a little bit, but I just want to glance through it a little bit. You'll notice that I have every coach, and I have specific roles and expectations for each of those coaches. And what I'm going to come back to is flexibility. Usually on any given day at a training session or a match, I rarely have more than 2 other coaches and myself. It's usually 2 or 3 coaches and me. And that depends on the day. It depends on whether it's a match, whether it's late at night, whether it's away, whether it's home, whether you move training inside, whether it's a recovery day, all those kinds of things. And so I have 7 coaches, most of which never come every day. Most of them come 1 or 2 days a week total. And when I was a young coach, that was a big scare for me. I wanted somebody there 5 days a week with me all the time, helping me out, and then helping me navigate stuff. And what I've learned over time is, if you learn how to be flexible and you're very organized and you communicate really, really well, and you have an exciting program that people want to be a part of, you can actually reduce your workload, maximize your kids' experience, and involve more people that really want to give to your program and can help your program, and it runs significantly smoother, and you're a lot more successful, and the kids really enjoy it more. And so I'll come back to how I organized all of these things, but I first wanted to share with you that I am extremely organized with what everybody's role is, and that we have a huge staff. But most of them are unpaid or paid very little, if any, and most of them only come a couple of days a week. And by doing that, I've actually increased my staff and reduced my workload and my stress level. So I'm going to go back away from that. I'm going to start with where do I begin, right? So when I build my staff, the first thing we do is we have a coach's dinner, right? Like in the fall, we have a coach's dinner. Ours is coming up in, I think, not next week, the week after. And I'll sit down with my 7 coaches. We're going to walk through what next spring is going to look like starting in February, what the schedules look like, what do we do on rain days, what are we doing with in-between players. We have a role and responsibility for everybody on the staff, and we communicate really, really well, and then we maximize everybody's time. So coaches that can only be there on, say, Tuesdays, they'll have a role and a responsibility. And then somebody who's maybe only doing recovery days, fitness and stretching, they'll have roles and responsibilities. And then somebody who's the goalkeeper coach, but is there 4 days a week, what does that look like for them? Are they paid? Are they not? And I'm going to kind of examine how we do it and things that maybe you need to think about when you start building your staff if you want to expand it and grow it. Okay. And so I'll come back, but we meet. That's the first thing we do is we meet and we break everything down. So I'm going to go to my next set of slides here. So excitement, right? How do I build a staff? It doesn't start with what you might think. A lot of people want to know, who do I call and where do I reach out to? Honestly, the staff came to me. Building a staff starts with, do people want to be a part of your program, right? What kind of demeanor do you present in the community, not just on the sideline, not just in the locker room, but when everybody in your community sees you out and about, what do they think? Do they associate you with the program? Do they associate positivity with it? And does it resound out into the community so much that people are like, hey, I played for a while, I live in the community, I work at such and such a job, I can give you 2 hours a week and I want to help. Or, hey, I'd like to get into coaching. How do I do that? What could I do for you? And a lot of my staff has come from that. And there are 3 things that I think you have to do. You have to be verbally positive, and you have to be visible, and then you have to appreciate the people that are around you. Okay, and I'm going to kind of go into those things, right? So here's what I would ask you: how do you talk about your team in the community? I'll give you an example. I work with a coach of a different sport, and he was trying to hire one assistant coach. That's all he wanted, one coach. He's the only coach. He runs a varsity and a JV program on his own, and he can't get anybody to help him. And he's in a very popular sport. So there should be no reason that we don't have people there. He gets good athletes, and there shouldn't be a reason that he can't get people there. But in his conversations, in interviews and conversations in the community, he always talks about how they're not going to be very good. They don't have a lot of great returners. He doesn't think they have much of a chance to win anything. He only has 1 or 2 really good players, and everybody else is rough. His communication is, hey, I need an assistant coach, but I just need you to sit there and write stuff down. I don't want you to interact with the kids. I need you to clean the towels. His demeanor is so negative, and his constant communication is so negative that without realizing it, he puts so many people off in the community that nobody, even people with knowledge and time on their hands and would be more than willing to volunteer, don't really have an interest because they see all that negativity and they just don't want to be around that. They don't want to be a part of that in their program. So my question to you is, when you get out in the community and people overhear you talking about your team, what are you saying? Even when it's the worst player you have on the team, what's your conversation like? Is it, hey, it's a new kid, he's working hard, I don't know, he's working as hard as he can. We definitely see a lot of progress. It's a strong team, and the kid's very committed and we're excited. Are you positive? Are you engaging? And are you open to everybody and trying to get people into your program? Are you excited, right? Are you enthusiastic about your program? And then, do you believe your players have a chance to develop? People will know that. And if you really always think this year's going to be a great year, we got a chance this year, even when you just graduated 13 and it's not, and everyone around you knows it's not, do you portray that it's going to be? And if you do, people want to get on that wagon. People want to help that wagon, and they're gonna contribute in a way that does overachieve. And that's really what we're trying to do, is impact kids, inspire kids, influence kids. And to do those things, you need those people, and you need really a good positive environment. That doesn't mean that there's not going to be things that you say that are negative, but are you mindful about it? And do you think it resonates in your community? Second thing is visibility, right? And so for me, visibility kind of is a number of things, right? Are you outworking the people around you? So like my assistant coaches, my players always see me at the field, mowing, changing sprinkler heads, cleaning up the shed, unlocking stuff so kids can get out there and train a little bit extra. I communicate really well, like we're working on ordering gear for next year, or I hold leadership meetings, once every other week with my kids. I have exit interviews. So they see me visibly putting in all this extra time that has nothing to do with necessarily between the lines, but has to do with them as a kid and our program in general. And so that goes to that last question. Do you put in the time outside the lines? And I do. And because I do, a lot of coaches or a lot of former players, a lot of people in the community that did coach soccer or retired or moved to the area, they want to be a part of that. They want to put in time too, because they see I'm putting in that time. So they're encouraged to put in time. That also comes into play when you have people who want to be a part, but they're like, hey, I can only give you 1 day a week. Well, if you play that right, more than likely, if they really enjoy being around your program, 1 turns into 2 and 3 without question, right? Usually it's because they're nervous about their commitment level. And if you just allow them that space, and then you're really positive, you're out working all the time, they're inspired to do so as well. And then do you arrive, like, do your players see you arriving first and leaving last? Like, that's really important too. I know we all have families and we have other obligations, but I incorporate my family as much as I can, so that they see how important this is. Both my family seeing how important the program is, and the program seeing how important my family is. And so all that extra time is the visibility aspect, right? That draws people to want to help your program. And then the last piece of the excitement and the enthusiasm of your program is appreciation, right? Do you shake hands with your scorekeepers, managers, after every game, give them a hug, thank them for running the scoreboard, thank the team mom in front of everybody for the team meal, or the after team drink or after game drinks? Do they see it? That's really, really important. And do you do it consistently? So I find myself thanking people pretty much every day, all day. And the more that I let people know that I love them and I appreciate them and I can't thank them enough, even when sometimes they're too much and they're overbearing and they're unnecessary and they ask questions that don't make any sense and they should know the answer to, I try to be very mindful of being positive in my response and appreciative, and they're just willing to do so much more for me. They constantly want to do more. Do I make my parents my players do the same kinds of things? Well, yeah, I do. I expect that my players, when they get done a team meal or they get done a game, they're shaking hands with the referee. They're thanking my dad who runs the scoreboard. They're thanking the team mom who brought the meal. They're doing all those things for 2 reasons. A lot of times it's because it's a standard we have and they know it. They see me do it, and so they remember they're supposed to do it. So I try to model that. Again, these are important because when you have extra staff and they're not paid, thanking them all the time is really their payment. So my girls, they thank the assistant coaches after every training session, after every game. My leadership tries to be very intentional, like, hey, you helped a lot the other night. Your insights were great. Like, be specific, give that info. And we practice that as much as we possibly can, because they're such a big part of what we do. And the more we do that, the more they don't want to leave. And the more they tell other people, and other people are asking if they can be a part. I've had 4 guys asked to leave their coaching jobs and just come be an assistant with me recently. And it's just because they want to be in an environment where they're appreciated. They don't care about the money. They just want to be appreciated and they want to help. And that makes a huge difference. Do you outfit your managers and scorekeepers and team moms, right? I don't have any money from the school, none. I outfit them out of my own pocket. That's a harsh thing to ask. And when I was a first year coach, second year coach, I don't know that I had the money to do that. But as you grow and develop as a coach, you start to realize that there are ways to do that. When you do fundraising, set aside a little bit of money where you can buy some sweatshirts, t-shirts, fan wear for the people that are going to be very involved, that are lining your field, mowing your field, running your clock, all those kinds of things, and outfit them, right? And that way they feel a part and they tell people, hey, he's going to take care of you. He's going to get you gear if you're helping him out. And that makes a big difference too. It also puts more visibility in your community, right? Those people are out there wearing their stuff because they're proud of it, and it helps to generate interest. And then do you invest in their lives, right? I try to have, like I showed earlier, we do a coach's dinner. It's all paid for. One of my assistant coaches, he has a ton of money to burn. So he always pays for a huge dinner for the coaches pre-season and then mid-season. And so we do that. I try to have every assistant coach and their family, whether it be a large family, small family, fiance, girlfriend, whatever it is, boyfriend, like any kind of partner, over to the house for a dinner with my family so that they can see how I live and they can see how invested I am and I care about them. And not really talk soccer or sports, but just about their lives and how they're doing. Again, these are things that will not only attract coaches to want to be a part of your staff, but keep them there. Flexibility. This is the most important thing you can do to build a staff, right? You've got full-time staff, part-time staff, and really part-time staff. And if you're really smart, you're comfortable with really part-time staff. And if all you have is really part-time staff and you're super organized and you communicate well, you might be more successful than one full-time staff. Having somebody there 5 days a week is great. But the reality is I'd rather have 5 people there 2 times a week each, a couple of them 1 time a week, and it's different faces. I know they're committed to that one time. And they have different skill sets. They can bring something to the table that maybe one person can't do a large number of things, but does one thing well. There's a lot to be said to having somebody you can count on all the time. But if you communicate well, you can count on all those people to step up when they need to. And that's really worked well for our staff. What's the difference in those things for me? Do I need a full-time staff? And can I deal with part-time staff? Are you willing to take on part-time staff? And what would that look like? Those are questions you really got to ask. And what about really, really part-time staff? On the list, one of the last coaches listed in the earlier list that I'll bring back under organization, he's a former player of mine. He works in downtown Charlotte. He lives 30 minutes away. He comes every chance he can. Now, some weeks it's 2 weeks in a row we haven't seen him, and then he comes to 2 home games, and then he's at a training session. But he makes an effort to really get to know the players when he's there. He engages with the players. He has good insights. He can help drive a session because he's young and he's athletic and he played and he was very good and they respect that about him. And so he has a role to play, and I outfit him. I hook him up with some gift cards to, get his car washed or get some food, and we feed him team meals when he comes. And for him, that's more than enough to keep him engaged and keep him there. And he's super useful. And if I needed him, I know I could call him. So I give him the flexibility to come whenever he can. And when I really need him, I let him know. And he tries to plan for that. By being flexible, instead of him saying, I can't do 5 days a week, I can't be a part of your program at all, I instead said, whenever you can come is great. And then I just allow him to make that schedule. And when I know he's going to arrive, I adjust my whole practice plan to fit him in. And I'm going to get to that too. So flexibility is really key. And a lot of people struggle with that. But once you get good at it, that's a huge benefit. Here's what I would suggest you do. When you're going to go build your team, here are the things you need to ask. Do I have a goalkeeper coach? If I was a football coach, do I have a wide receivers coach? Do I have a running back coach? What am I not good at that I need someone to do? Do I need a JV coach? Do I need somebody who can just handle those other 20 kids or those other 10 kids or this group that's just not quite, maybe I only have a varsity team, but I've got 5 or 6 kids that are just not even close, and I'm keeping 23. Can I get somebody with those 5 or 6 that aren't even close and train them separately and develop them so I don't lose my program in the next 2 years, and they don't have to train all the time with me? So do I need that? Do I need a technical coach, right? Maybe I got thrust into the job and I love the sport and I know it and I'm good at it, but I know my limitations, and there's somebody in the community that's really knowledgeable and can do the technical work, right? And I'll handle the subbing and the formation and the game day stuff, but they'll handle technical training. Fitness coach, right? Like, what does a fitness coach look like? I have a female assistant coach who's a teacher on staff who played for me, and she does 2 days a week. On her 2 days, she comes down to the field with a speaker and runs the yoga recovery stretching session for the players who played, 70 minutes plus the night before, right? That's her job. That's her role. She helps design off-season workouts. She comes once a week. When we have a 2-day-a-week lifting in the off season, she comes once a week and she teaches technique and form. And that's her role and responsibility. That's what she does. She doesn't get paid for any of that. It's very limited what her expectations are in terms of time commitment, which makes it easy for her to say, yes, coach, I can be a part of your program this year. As long as you know when I can get there, I'll get there. Or these are my limitations. Do you need a bus driver, right? So she knows she's not going to drive a bus. She doesn't care if I pay her because she knows I need to pay somebody who can also drive a bus. In North Carolina, we drive the bus for our teams. And so having a JV bus driver would be really good. And so do I need to pay somebody because they have a bus license? And that means I need to find somebody else, to come a little bit less, and just not pay them and be able to work that out. Do I need experienced coaches, which are a little bit older, they've got more years, and they can help me navigate things because I'm a young coach? Or am I an older coach? And yeah, I can get out there and knock the ball around, but I need some of these young guys that just graduated college or high school, and they can run 100 miles an hour and get out there and push the kids. Do I coach a female program, and do I not have a female coach, right? If I need a female coach and I need a female role model and I can't seem to find one unless I pay them, then that's where my stipend is going to go. That's where the money's going to go, because I got to focus at that. Do I need a scout or a film coach? Is there somebody willing to do that once a week? So these things you need to prioritize, and you pay the ones that are going to fill the most important roles, and everybody else, adjusts. And I think that's kind of how you work that out. And for a lot of coaches, that's tough to manage money. Again, my assistant coaches are making $700. There's 3 of them, and that's $700 each. That's it. So they're not really making anything for the hours they're putting in. And 2 of them actually take their money and divide it and give money to the other assistant coaches who are volunteer. They buy them food, they buy gift cards, they contribute as well, so that it kind of all passes down. But I think you need to prioritize what you want, and then you've got to be willing to make it work. If you need a goalkeeper coach and they can be there once a week, have them. Volunteer status, come once a week, instead of turning them away because they can't give you 5 days a week. And when I was young, I would have turned them away. I would have said, I need somebody all the time. And what I've realized is I don't. I really don't. And if that means it's every week, it's different for them, I need to adjust my practice plan and fit them in however I've got to, so that my goalkeepers are getting coached because I have access to somebody. 9 times out of 10, they're going to give you more time than they tell you if you can get them in the door, you're excited about the program, and you appreciate them. All right, if you're going to be flexible and you're going to grow your staff, you really need to define what you accept versus what you expect. And that's hard. My paid coaches, I tell them, look, if you want to keep getting a stipend, I need 3 to 5 days a week. You need to be able to give me that. That's the deal. It might be 3, it might be 5, it might be 3 1 week, 4 another week, 2 1 week, 5 the next week. We need to be between 3 and 5 days a week, and we need to kind of do that, or I need to be able to move the money down the line and keep you on and just find a way to pay you some other way. For those that are not getting paid, I don't really care how much time they give me. If it's once a month, then that's what it is. I do all the paperwork, I get them on the staff, they jump through every hoop, drug test, background check, whatever it is. And then I hope that the more we work in the program, the more they want to stay in the program. But I think you need to kind of lay out what your expectations are and what you're willing to accept. When I first started, I wouldn't have accepted anything less than 5 days a week. Now I'll accept whatever I need to make it work so I have these people on my staff. Adjust to maximize your staff. Sometimes I'll get an email or a phone call, or we'll be on a group chat, and I'll realize I'm going to have more staff than I thought that day. And I had a practice plan, and we just had this match, and I know what we need to work on. Man, I've got 3 assistant coaches available today. Maybe we need to do a functional training session. Maybe I need to find a way to incorporate them, right, in my session. Again, that's flexibility. Why do I need to do that? I need to give them something to do. If they're there, they want to be there, and they don't want to stand and watch. That's not going to be their hour and a half. They're not going to want to come back. So I know that I need to give them a role and responsibility within the session that day or the match that day, because they're going to be there. And then I need to visibly give that staff authority and support it. So when we get to the training session, my girls know, like, hey, Coach JP is going to do this. Coach Ramiro is going to take the center mids and run a session. The forwards, you're going to go with Coach Shanklin, and he's going to spend some time with you, and we move forward. And it's tough because I might have had a plan and something I really needed to do. But if I do it and I don't use my staff that's there, I've wasted that opportunity. And I'm a high school coach with a very short period of time. So it's all about maximizing the growth of the players. And sometimes I need to move things around to make that work. And I've gotten a lot better at that over time. So if you're really flexible, that's great. But that also means you got to be really organized, right? And the first thing I have listed there is an accountability tree. I use, my tree is not who's paid or what their title is. It's who I trust. It's who's been there the longest. You know, I've got a JV head coach who's not going to take any pay this year, and he's been with me for 10 years. So I trust him. So he might be a volunteer coach who's only there 2-3 days a week, but anything that happens with the JVs and anyone who's working with the JVs is going to communicate to him first. And he's going to handle situations, and then he's going to come to me if he needs me. And so I set up a tree that is based on my trust of my assistant coaches. But ultimately, I'm at the top of the tree. I'm the trunk. I own everything. So anything that goes wrong is on me, and anything that goes well is on them. I need to be intentional. Everyone gets a set of roles and responsibilities. And by that, I'm going to slip back to the very beginning, and now is a good opportunity to kind of look at coaching roles and responsibilities in organization. You'll see that I have a list of roles and responsibilities for every single coach. For example, Andrew is going to keep track of all the equipment. He's going to assist with keeper training because he has experience with that. He's going to drive the bus because that's his role. I mean, he can do that. But on game day, he determines the lineup, he determines the formation, and he runs the JV team. Whereas my JV assistant doesn't have that role or responsibility. They have helps with all of those things. When I hand this out at the beginning of the year, it's things that when I was younger, I didn't think you really needed to say that. I think we all kind of knew what was going on. What I've realized is if you hand this out, it's very clear. Like, it's extremely clear. My volunteers that show up know it's not my job. I can give my opinion, but it's Andrew's job to determine the lineup. So I'm not going to assume I should just make changes or do them. And I'm not going to get upset. I'm not going to be, arguing with him or complaining about his changes. That's not my role. And that's really important. When you set those roles and responsibilities, they can focus on what their job is and not what they want their job to be. If they want their job to be something else, they need to speak to me about that. And then we can talk about how they can earn that trust and earn that responsibility. You'll see that at the bottom of every responsibility is build relationships with players, build relationships with players, build relationships with players. Every coach has that. And that's because that's like our connecting piece for every coach. And so I have lists of all kinds of responsibilities and roles. I hand this out at our first meeting when we have our team dinner. so that there's no questions as to who's making what decisions, who's going to call who when there's an issue, who's allowed to speak to parents, what should you say to parents. All of that stuff is organized so that the coaches know this. This is really, really important when you don't have people with you 5 days a week, because when they're there 5 days a week, you can handle most stuff right there. But when they're coming in and coming out and they have this in front of them, they already know ahead of time, and there's no debate about it. It also helps me to keep me organized and tell Andrew, have you spoken to the assistants? Have you communicated with who's working with you today? Do we have someone there to cover the training session for the JVs? He handles all of that with his assistant coach. When they don't have someone or they need help, they reach out to me, and I have an assistant coach who has that job. You'll see under Ramiro's job, he runs technical training for our hybrid team. So his job is to fill in for the JVs or the upper level JV players and lower level varsity players whenever we see fit. So he has that role and responsibility ahead of time. Now most of his time might be spent with me, working with a training session or running a training session, or organizing something, but he knows that's part of his responsibilities. So it's not a big surprise to him, 3 weeks in when I'm like, hey, JV coach has had something come up, you need to run the training session. He says, okay, and he knows that's part of his job. When you have 7 people, a lot of them can get confused as to what their role is or who's more important, or I don't do that stuff. That's not why I'm here. Well, now it's already on paper and they know it and they've agreed to it. And I think that's really, really important, okay? And I'm gonna kind of pop back over and move myself along here. So staying with the roles and responsibilities, maximize the staff. If they're there, give them something to do. I've already kind of talked about that. And then praise your staff. So when they do a really good job of the training session, my girls know, I'm like, man, it was a good session, right, guys? And they give them praise. They let them know. And then if things go wrong, I immediately take responsibility. If the session kind of fails, or if they're trying to teach something, it's not working, or if they learned something from one of my assistant coaches, and in the middle of a game, they're doing something that the assistant coach asked them to do, but it's not what I want them to do. I take responsibility with that kid. I tell them, hey, that's my fault. I told them the wrong thing to teach you. So it's not their fault, it's mine. Now, it might not have been my fault. I might need to circle back and speak to my assistant coaches and make sure they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. But I never let any kid think that my assistant coaches are not doing things correctly or are unsuccessful. I make sure that they're always getting praise and feeling successful. It's what keeps them there and keeps them coming back, because we all make mistakes and we're all a little bit off. And if it's a constant habit, it'll be something I'll deal with, and maybe they don't need to be part of our staff. But 9 times out of 10, it was a miscommunication. It was something they didn't understand, or they tried to run a session and they're just not great at that session, or they didn't design it well. And I need to give them encouragement to kind of keep building their sessions and get better at them. And just like most players, they know when they've done wrong. They don't need me to tell them. And so a lot of times, if I give them praise and I support them, my players will buy into them and respect them. And that keeps staff there. And it keeps a lot of weight off of me and allows the people in my sphere of influence that are very, very good at what they do, working with my players and growing my program. Communication. Man, I communicate daily with my staff. When we get into season, every day there's some communication. It could be quick training plans like, hey, I'm going to take the varsity. We're going to do 20 minutes on this, this, and this. I don't necessarily share an entire session plan, but I let them know, like, hey, we got an hour and 15 minutes today. I need at least 30 minutes doing this, and I need us to think about the other 30 minutes. What do you guys think? So it could be feedback oriented. It could be directed information, but it's the whole staff, even guys who aren't coming. I know they're not coming, and they're still on the communication, because that keeps them in the loop and included in what we're doing. So when they do come, they know what we worked on that week. They know the issues that are going on within the team. They know the goals and objectives we're trying to meet and accomplish. And they also feel included and a part of the group. And And then I communicate staff roles. So I might say, hey, by the way, we didn't know we were going to have Brett today. So Brett, I want you in the training session. JP, that means you can grab the goalkeepers early and do 45 minutes. How long do you need? And when can we do scrimmaging? So I ask those questions and then I define their roles. It's very relaxed. It's not like super professional and official. It sounds more family and comfortable when it comes from me, but it is coming from me and I'm making those decisions. I also include my staff in relevant updates, right? We get a kid suspended, we get a kid in trouble with grades. My whole staff knows, hey, I'm gonna have to pull this kid aside. They're having some grade issues in a class. If you get a chance to talk to them, talk to them. I don't have to give all the details, but I need them to know, hey, we had a kid today have a bad day. Just giving you a heads up when Berkeley gets to the training session, mom and dad not doing well, right? She was in tears in my room before she got down there. Just want to give you a heads up. They don't need to know all the details, but how they treat her will be very different if they know that information. And a lot of head coaches will keep information. And I understand you're trying to be very confidential, but you have to trust your staff to an extent. And you need to keep them in a position where they can be successful. So they need to know a good amount of the updates. And then again, use the accountability tree, right? Like who's supposed to communicate with who. I know that when I send out my stuff, the next thing I do is a direct message to my head JV coach. Hey, you talk to who's going to be with you? Are you going to be there? Do you know what you're doing today? They report back, yeah, we got it, coach. We're good. I'm done. I let him handle his stuff. If I reach out to my keeper coach and I say, hey, do you need Ramiro today? Yes, he's going to come help me. He will be with you. I've communicated with him. So I kind of have a little bit of a tree of expectation and communication. We have 2 group messages, okay, or 3 group messages, I should say. We have our very professional one, which is we use I want to say a team snap thing, and anything that we need to go to the group or just kind of very detailed schedule changes go in there. We have an email group, and that's going to be like, hey, very official information, right? Like this happened at the school today. I'm making a schedule change and sending it to parents. We have a uniform issue, whatever that might be. And then we have a group text. Now the group text, I have a standard and I set ground rules for, because we get in a group text of a bunch of coaches and sometimes the banter gets a little bit moving along and we lose our way with what we're supposed to be doing. So my rule is on the group message that I send, it needs to be focused on what's going on and within the team, and a joke here and there is okay, but we need to move forward and we need to be aware that we have 7 people on that message, right? We don't want to waste everybody's chain of events. However, they can send a message that says, hey, I'm going to send out a group chat about something else. We're going to go to this happened, or we're going to go, get a dinner, or hey, did you hear about this? You can do that, but do that by creating your own group message that is not our soccer one. And that's really, really important. I think that also establishes that I'm the head guy and that what I say goes at the end of the day. And it helps to keep everybody knowing that so that there's no confusion. Make time at the beginning, middle, and end. If you don't do that, you're not going to be as successful. You're just not. And it's really important that you do that. Meet with your coaches, let them talk. Last thing, excitement. Does everyone know that you love your program? Everyone in the community knows I love my program. And that is what has driven most coaches to want to be a part of what we're doing. It's not how much we win. And we win well. We've probably got 11 conference championships in the girls in the last 23 years. We usually have a pretty solid winning season. But that's not why people want to be a part of my program. It's really not. And we don't talk about winning a whole lot. We talk a lot about influencing the kids, impacting the kids, and inspiring them to try to be the best kids they can be. And it takes a lot of pressure off of how good I am at coaching soccer and more on I'm there and I care and we're going to work hard. And then it makes things easier. I hope that you enjoyed the presentation. I tend to go for forever. I understand this, so I apologize if I went longer than you were expecting me to. or shorter than I was expected to. I want to give you an opportunity to ask me questions, go back to things, talk anything you want about building a staff and how we did it and what I do. And I'm happy to answer those questions or turn it over to Saxton.